Okay, now I have to repeat the introduction, damn it. Okay, so welcome everybody to the new edition of the new policy briefing. We will give you an update on recent developments relevant for us. Yeah, so we have 1 hour. Uh, that's our agenda for today. Antonella will give you an overview about current developments when it comes to artificial intelligence. And then Kamil will talk about hate crime and hate speech. And I will talk about housing policy. And then you can ask questions or give us comments. Okay, and we're already at the first presentation, and I hand over to Antonella. Antonella. Just a brief question. Are you co-host Antonella? Can you click yourself? Can you click by yourself? Yeah, you're
No.
no, you're the main
You,
host
you do
actually.
that for me?
Huh?
Can you do that for me?
I can also do that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Hi
No
everyone.
worries.
So today I will give an overview of how artificial intelligence is affecting the lives and experiences of disabled people, particularly in relation to independent living. And I will also share some insight from our survey and our focus group, highlighting both the opportunities and risk. So next slide, please. Okay, so first, what is the EU AI Act? So the European Union Artificial Intelligence Act is the first EU-wide law regulating AI, and it entered in force since August 2024. And it's also the first ever comprehensive legal framework on AI at global level. The purpose of this act is to foster trustworthy AI in Europe, to protect the fundamental human rights, prevent discrimination, and ensure safety of the users. The regulation adopt a risk-based approach. This means the AI systems are not all treated the same. So the higher the risk an AI system pose to people or society, the stricter the rules it must follow. So we have, for example, an acceptable risk, and then the result is banned, high risk, strict controls, transparency or limited risk when the systems are subject to transparency requirements, and finally, low risk, subject to minimal rules. Next slide, please. So in the next slide, we can see pyramid illustrating the risk levels as classified in the EU AI Act. So we have an acceptable risk. And for example, social scoring, mass surveillance, manipulation of behavior causing harm. Then we have the high risk level, and we have, for example, biometric identification, categorization, and emotion recognition not falling under the prohibited practices. We have also access to essential services such as employment, education, and public services and law enforcement. Under the limited risk, we have virtual assistants, chatbots, emotion recognition, biometric categorization of other kind, and also deep fake. While among the minimal risk, we have the general purpose of AI models, so all the remaining. Next slide, please. Okay, so in February 2024, ENIL commenced a project to create a fact sheet on the impact of AI on independent living of people with disabilities. And as part of this exercise, we conducted desk research, we launched an online survey, and organized a focus group discussion. The result of the work and the fact sheet are available on our website. Next slide, please.
Antonella, sorry for interrupting, just to say that in case you feel like responding, there is a comment already for you, or you want to respond afterwards. I just monitor the chat, so just to let you know.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we can address the comments at the end.
Later. And also someone to keep an eye on the
But I see the
waiting
comment
room.
surprised that deepfake is in such a low risk. Yes, I agree. I think it's very dangerous, especially how it targets disabled people and also disabled women and young people. So when it comes to understanding AI, so what is AI? There's no single definition. For some people, it means smart speakers or home devices. For others, generative AI or speech recognition tools. For ENIL's work, we use a very simple definition. So computer systems able to perform complex tasks historically done by humans, reasoning, decision making, problem solving. So basically AI is a technology that perform tasks that used to require human intelligence. What emerged clearly is that participants already encounter AI in many forms, even if they define it differently. Next slide. So independent living is about self-determination, autonomy, and full participation in society. AI has, of course, the potential to support these goals. For example, people with speech disabilities in our focus group told us that AI now recognize their voice patterns, allowing them to control devices and communicate more independently. I included here the quote from a participant saying, "I can operate appliances and write messages without relying on family members." So this really shows the real life impact AI can have. Next slide, please. On the next slide, we see the benefits of AI. So we observed we observe many ways in which AI enhance accessibility. Tools like captioning services help people follow online meetings. Eye typing supports people with limited mobility, and apps like Seeing AI and Be My Eyes provide image descriptions for blind users. Also, emerging tools recognize non-normative speech patterns. So all these technologies support communication, daily living, education, and employment, and can really help disabled people to carry out daily tasks independently. Next slide. Okay, so our findings confirm that disabled people are often early adopters of AI technologies. So from our survey and the focus group discussion, we collected some data, and we understand that a majority use some form of assistive technologies. Many rely on voice assistants and smart home devices. Over half use dictation software, and generative AI tools such as ChatGPT and Gemini are also widely used for emails, studying, or accessing complex information. People also use health apps and trackers to manage conditions, including health conditions and like diabetes. So overall, AI is already deeply integrated into the lives of disabled people. Next slide. Alongside the benefits, AI carries also significant risk. Because AI systems learn from biased data, they often reproduce discrimination. Examples include hiring tools, screening that screened out disabled candidates, or also exam misinterpreting the body movements of disabled people. Also, some wearable technologies can even infer the disability status, and these problems reduce autonomy and can reinforce ableist assumptions. So the technology is, of course, helpful, but very far from being neutral. Next slide, please. Participants weren't necessarily afraid of AI, but they were concerned about a possible misuse, especially when AI is trained mostly on data from non-disabled people. So two main concerns were trust and privacy. Privacy was a very big concern. 44% of participants were moderately worried and 32% very worried. People also reported difficulties with cookie prompts and unclear data practices. And many felt that privacy laws exist, but are becoming weaker, and they're really unsure how disability-related data is handled. Next slide. Some technologies marketed as promoting independence can also actually reinforce ableism. We have the example of exoskeletons, robotic arms, and cochlear implants that often frame disability and disabled bodies as something to fix. So also health data is used to target people with personalized advertisements, including for medications. Voice biomakers can infer mental health conditions. And in public system, algorithms have reduced care hours or even excluded disabled people from housing advertisements. For example, Facebook was found to be allowing advertisers from excluding people with disabilities from housing advertisements. So these are very serious threats to community living and independent living. Next slide. AI also pose a risk to institutionalization and re-institutionalization. When we talk about the independent living movement, of course, the institutionalization is at the core of our work. The idea that disabled people should have the right to live in the community with appropriate support instead of living in institutions. AI tools, when used by governments or service providers, have the potential to undermine this right. For example, a biased algorithm can determine how many care hours someone receives, and we have seen cases where this leads to cuts in essential services. And also, similarly, in the private sector, as I said before, Facebook, but also other platforms were allowed to share advertisement, excluding disabled people from seeing these advertisements, not only for housing, but also for other essential services. So practices like these are not just discriminatory, which is already serious, but they also directly threaten the ability of disabled people to live independently and included in the community. So in short, if AI is used without the careful oversight, it risks pushing disabled people back into institutions or other isolating settings. And next slide, please. Okay, so in conclusion, AI offers important opportunities to support autonomy, but it also brings a risk that disproportionately affect disabled people. To ensure AI truly supports independent living, disabled people must be included in the design, development, and governance of these technologies. And the values of autonomy, choice, and self-determination should guide any discussion on AI and related technologies. So the last point to conclude is that more research, especially led by disabled people, is essential to understand the impact of AI and especially the long-term impact and consequences. And so I conclude the presentation, and I can also send the link I included in the chat to check our webpage on AI. There's an article and then the link to our fact sheet with the result of the survey, which is very much complete. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonella, for this very helpful presentation. So make a note of your questions. You can ask them at the end. And now I hand over to Kamil for the next presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Florian, and also Antonella for the very interesting presentation. I will talk today about how the European Union addresses hate crime and hate speech, both offline and online. We will briefly see the legal framework, some policy developments, and we will see how the EU push slowly to make it more to legalize more into the criminal law, to make it more how the EU push this hate crime and hate speech to make it criminal law, and how this is relevant for disabled people who are increasingly targeted more and more. We see incidents of hate speech and hate crime everywhere, online and offline, but not always protected by EU rules. So Florian, I will also bother you with the slides, please. We can go to the first one. So let me also start. So thank you, by the way. So why it's important for disabled people to work on hate crime and hate speech? Let's put things into a perspective. As I said before, disabled people face high levels of hostility, harassment, and in general hate behaviors, which sometimes it's easy to understand, sometimes they are quite normalized and we don't recognize this type of harassment. Ableism, for example, is one of these cases, and ableist stereotypes reinforce exclusion a lot. Disability-related hate crime and hate incidents are underreported and overlooked, and this is one of the biggest problems I see when working on the topic. I mean, sometimes I read documents or follow webinars on the topic, and we see many groups addressed, but not disabled people. which means that it is kind of normalized, and that's a problem. So, no, I mean, a lot of people will complain, I don't know, about not having, the disabled people on the table. Sorry, not having, I don't know, women on the table or people of color or LGBTQI, and that's good. Everyone should be on the table. But no one will complain if the table is not accessible. So things like that, are important and can, lead to exclusion. Disabled people input ensure that the policies reflect our lived experiences and are, based on the reality, which, as we said, we face quite a lot of this kind of cases. When it comes to independent living, these hate incidents limit our full participation in community life, because, I mean, if you are always afraid that you will be, I don't know, bullied or feeling bad, you will not go out, you will not go to regular school, and you will go to, I don't know, special school, and you will not find easily a job, and I mean, many other cases. So it's important also from the perspective of the institutionalization, which Antonella also said is the core of our work, one of the pillars, that, when you have prejudice and this kind of behaviors, it can justify segregation. So combating hate and hate behavior supports community inclusion. And if we understand that, it's very helpful to move forward. Very often disabled people are portrayed as burdens to the society or being mocked for different characteristics or behaviors, how we appear, how we behave, whatever. And I mean, even though some countries include disability into their national hate crime laws, some others don't, and the protection across EU is quite inconsistent, which, it's not good for us, because there is no equally, our rights are not equally safeguarded, depending on where we live. And recognizing disability at the EU level when we talk about hate crime and hate speech would definitely create some awareness and support us move forward in a more dignified life. We can move to the next slide, please. And in the meantime, also move in my notes. Thank you. Very quickly, what is the difference between hate crime and hate speech, just to put things to perspective? So hate speech is the hostile and degrading expressions targeting disability. I mean, disability in our case, it can be many other characteristics. Hate speech face people of color, people of, with different sexual orientation, people of different religious background, and so on, different gender, and many others. So in that case, in our case, we talk about disability. So, things that target our disability, it doesn't have to be physically harmful, but it falls through stigma and exclusion. Like, they talk to us in a specific way, or, maybe documents are addressed in a specific way, or reports in the TV, we see reporters talking in a bad way about, I don't know, stuff like, I mean, I don't know, why are you talking like that? Are you blind? Or I don't know, stuff like that. So these are hate speech instances. And hate crime is a criminal act motivated by bias, like threats and stuff like that. And of course, carries higher penalties due to the bias motive. So very briefly, if we want to say to a child what is the difference, we would say hate speech is harmful expression, hate crime is harmful action. But both of them are in a way harmful. We can go to the next slide, please. And while we go, thank you very much, Florian. So very briefly, what ENIL what is the work of ENIL when it comes to hate crime and hate speech. We are members of the Facing Facts Network, a group of NGOs led by SEGI, and it is a broad international network of civil society organizations with different backgrounds. I mean, I participated in their meetings, and we are one, I don't know, maybe the one and the only disability organization there. And there is one other person, I think, sometimes. But most of them are religious organizations or of people of color or people supporting the rights of people that belong to the Roma community or to the LGBTQI or so on. So it's a very diverse network. And also, so there are law enforcement agencies in the discussion in order all together to tackle the issue of hate crime and hate speech. And I think there is some good work produced, and I encourage you to visit the website. I will put it later in the chat so you can have a look. We are also members of the high-level group on combating hate speech and hate crime, coordinated by DG Justice and Consumers of the European Commission. And again, there is a lot of work on the European level on this topic, and we are glad to be there. And we are following the developments of FRA and of the ODIHR work. ODIHR basically means Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, which belongs to OSCE, which, to be honest, I don't remember what it means, but it's one of these international bodies. We'll go to the next slide, please. Yes, so very briefly, the current legal framework in the core of the EU, the core of the EU instrument is the 2008 framework decision on combating racism and xenophobia. It requires all member states to criminalize public incitement to violence or hatred and to treat hate motivation as an aggravating factor. However, the scope is limited. It focuses on race, ethnicity, religion, and similar grounds, but it does not explicitly cover disability and some other groups like gender identity, sexual orientation. This creates gaps, especially for groups that experience growing level of hate, but lack consistent legal protection across the EU. One of the big debates now is whether the EU should broaden this framework. And the European Parliament has been pushing for hate speech and hate crime to be added to the list of EU crimes, which would give the EU stronger powers to set harmonized rules across all EU member states. This expansion would likely include grounds that are currently missing from the EU law, as we said, disability, for example, sexual orientation, age, and stuff like that. However, for this to happen, all member states must agree unanimously in the Council. And at the moment, it seems that consensus hasn't been reached. So the proposal remains, on paper, but it's not agreed. And it's important because the political momentum is growing. What else I can mention here is that from 2023, the Commission released a major policy statement called No Place for Hate. This is a set of political commitment to protect, they say, vulnerable communities. I don't like the word vulnerable, but let's say oppressed communities, to provide more funding for prevention and improve victim support. Very, very important, all these things. As I said before, there is also a high-level group that brings, by the European Commission, that brings stakeholders and national authorities, tech companies, and NGO, to work on this and develop practice and talk about the best practices. And yeah, FRA, the Fundamental Rights Agency, also monitor hate crime and try to identify problems on the topic. But sometimes they also miss the disability perspective, from what I remember, even though they recently, we had a nice chat and we tried to, and they said that, this will be definitely addressed even more. We can go to the next slide, which is my last, not last, the one before last. Yes. Wait. Yeah. Yes. Sorry. So that's my slide. This is one picture missing. That's why I was confused. But it was just a picture of social media. Maybe I forgot to put it when I sent it. It doesn't matter. It's okay. And I put the picture of social media logos before. A huge part of hate speech and hate crime happens online. So EU has shifted a lot of attention to digital space. The Digital Service Act, you will see it very often as the DCA. It's quite complicated and I mean long document and boring document if you ask me. But it's central here. It requires major platforms to assess and reduce systemic risk, including illegal hate speech, and to operate more transparently. This is important to know because you can use it if you identify such kind of acts, hate acts online. In 2025, the EU updated also its code of conduct on illegal hate speech, which is kind of voluntary. It's not binding, but it's important and it kind of reinforces also the Digital Service Act and is very important. So platforms like Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, X, whatever, signed this and they now are kind of signed it and agreed for stronger commitments for quicker removals and better user reporting systems and more data sharing with regulators. This is also a very important step, and it shows that, from when they started, the hate kind of decreased. But recently after the political developments in the USA, we see some steps back, and they start a little bit less again what they agreed in the code of conduct, which is a problem. But the EU is using also the Digital Service Act to push forward. For disabled people, of course, online hate is a major issue. We face a lot of ableism, harassment, mockery, stereotypes, and this is prolonging how society sees disabled people, and sometimes it leads to abuse and even more. And also AI that Antonella mentioned before, it can also be kind of prolong this kind of stereotypes and inside some hate speech and hate crime behaviors, because it's kind of biased sometimes. So we need to train also AI. And my final slide, and I stop. So I will. Yes, thank you very much, Florian. Sorry, I see it's not very nicely formatted, but it's okay. So very briefly, some developments outside of the EU, but still in the European continent. So we have the European Court of Human Rights, which protects freedom of expression, and allows, states to restrict hate speech that attack the dignity, safe, or equality of targeted group, also disabled people. However, its case law is sometimes inconsistent, leaving some harmful speech unpunished. They kind of explain that in some cases it is justified, which is a problem, but it's still a very important space where we can pursue and fight for our rights. So it's good to know that European Court of Human Rights can address this kind of issues. And of course, the Council of Europe, with which ENIL works also quite well, sets standards and provides guidance to combat hate speech and hate crime, promotes stuff like positive obligation for states to protect targeted groups and support human rights policies in different member states, also beyond EU, so Western Balkans, Eastern Partnership states, and it's helping, harmonizing regional European regional human rights standards in a way. So what EU is not doing that well, Council of Europe is trying to do, including also disability, which is important, while leaving the implementation to the national authorities, which is kind of problematic because, as we said, every different state is approaching differently things. Some are doing very well, some are doing very well, some are doing a bit less. We still need to talk more about hate crime and hate speech in the EU. And the Human Rights Commissioner of Council of Europe regularly highlights the rise of hate speech across Europe and pushes for stronger protection also for disability and other grounds. So I will stop here. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your attention. I don't have a closing slide in my part, but I think you can find my email and I will put it also in the chat in case you need it. And I give the floor to our wonderful moderator, Florian. You are muted.
Thanks. I thought maybe your email address is here, but it isn't. But don't worry. Okay. So, welcome to my presentation. It's about EU housing policy. What is the state of play? You're probably all aware that there are problems across Europe when it comes to housing. Since 2015, housing prices have risen on average 24%. So this is the average. So in some areas it might be worse. There's been a 45% increase of rents in large cities on average between 2014 and 2023. And in some areas also it's worse. And 14% of our population are living in overcrowded housing at the moment. At the same time, we see a 6% drop in investments in residential buildings in the last 2 years, and a 20% drop of building permits for residential buildings. The result is, for example, that we have an increase in homelessness, and 1.2 million people are estimated to be homeless at the moment. How does this affect disabled people? 9.3% of disabled people say they feel discriminated against compared to 4.1% of non-disabled people, more than twice as much. And 10.4% of disabled people indicate to be financially overburdened. These are EU statistics. And then in our independent living survey, we found out, which was done by Antonella, we found out that basically everybody is saying that housing is inaccessible. So for disabled people, this has the result that the lack of available and affordable and accessible housing is a barrier to deinstitutionalization. It is a reason sometimes why people choose, or not choose, have to choose institutions, because they just don't find another place to live. Or also many people in institutions say they could move out if only there was housing, but there isn't. So, and also many continue to reside with their families much longer than is usual. And also disabled people are really overrepresented in the homeless population. In Denmark, this is just an example from one country. In Denmark, 45% of homeless people say they have a physical impairment and 60% a psychosocial impairment. So we are really in the majority here, which is concerning. What is the EU doing about this? The EU is trying to take action. So there will be an affordable housing plan adopted soonish. It plans to increase investments so that, as you have seen on the statistics, the investment in housing has been dropping. So to get investment up again, the supply can keep up with the demand. Also, there are plans to double investments from EU funds to give member states more flexibility to subsidize housing. And also, there are plans for a European strategy for housing construction. And what is interesting for us, that the Commission will propose a Construction Services Act by the end of next year. And of course, what comes to, well, my mind, if I see this immediately, at the moment, it is not compulsory to use universal design when building residential housing. The European Accessibility Act failed to make this important requirement a reality. So we will try to get binding standards for accessibility for the built environment, of course. There's more. There are plans to improve the use of empty and underused buildings. This is often a problem also in Brussels, still that buildings, I know buildings which have been empty like for 10 years or so. Large buildings also tackle issues with short-term accommodation, rentals, like especially in big city areas. You can make easy money if you rent your home as an Airbnb, which of course restricts supply for people who need a permanent place to live. Also, there are plans to decrease energy bills. Energy has become expensive, and there are plans for an affordable housing dialogue. This sounds like something also we should join. Dialogue is always good. What has happened so far? So, the revision of state aid rules to give member states more flexibility for subsidizing housing has already taken place. There has been a European public consultation by the European Commission, and the European Parliament is working on a report. We have provided input to the consultation and the Parliament report. First of all, we have been highlighting the situation of disabled people when it comes to accessing housing, because honestly, it's not on people's radar. So the European Commission President herself has committed to improve access to housing for everybody, but there is no specific mention of disabled people. Also, for example, the draft of this European Parliament report, disabled people were not in there. So they're talking about, when it comes to target groups, they talk about young people, the problems of young people, or of older people, but not of disabled people. So we have been trying to get these statistics. We've been trying to get them in there, and also the institutionalization. Yeah. 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 Then, of course, proposing universal binding universal design standards. Yeah. Yeah, I think we can all agree that it won't work without that. And then also, if they want to use more EU funds to build houses, then it's of course important that these are built in an accessible way, so disabled people can move in, but also affordable for disabled people. So if these houses then go into the hands of housing companies, which want to make large profit and rise prices a lot, then it's not so helpful. Yeah, this slide is doubling the previous a bit, but here two new points. So we also support earmarking EU funding for social and non-profit housing. You might wonder, what is the difference? Social housing Usually this is built through public investments and non-profit housing. This is a technique to get private non-profit actors to also build housing. And another important difference, social housing usually after a couple of years goes over into the property of private actors. Tenants can buy the apartments or the house, and then it's no longer assured that it will be rent controlled. Non-profit housing is a concept to ensure that the housing it stays rent controlled long term. So to then really help bring prices down. Yeah. Also, we have been asking for a housing first approach for the institutionalization, in brackets, personal assistance close second. So this has been used a lot, this approach when it comes to combating homelessness. And yeah, matching with housing for people to confined institutions is also really important. Then also we've been asking for special outreach to homeless people to disabled homeless people. Yeah, this really needs to get onto people's radar that if we want to bring homelessness down, we have to tackle the specific needs of disabled people who are homeless disabled people. So matching with accessible housing. Yeah, if you match a homeless disabled person with housing, and this housing is not accessible, then they cannot move in, and then it's all kind of useless. Also, fast track access to personal budgets, personal assistance, also healthcare or potential other benefits. So as far as I know, this is not offered to homeless people at the moment. And of course, yeah, it goes without saying that yeah, so if the needs for these services is not taken into account, then also current programs to reduce homelessness, yeah, they are kind of useless then. Um, and also, you might have heard the EU has been working on an equal treatment directive, which would ban discrimination in accessing housing also for disabled people. But it's not yet adopted, so we're calling people to adopt this directive. Yeah, here is a new statement on housing and the institutionalization. We published in October. You will get the link. And also you can see our input to the consultation on the affordable housing plan. If you have further interest in the topic, here there's an OECD report on disability of housing, which I think is really good, really helpful, really exposes the problems. There are also EU statistics from the EU statistical agency Eurostat, but honestly, they give a good overview. But yeah, it's better than nothing. But I have mixed feelings because honestly, I feel that these figures they're giving us, I think they are too low. I think they underestimate somehow the problem. I think they measure it wrong. I think discrimination is. Oh, sorry. One more moment. I'm going to share again. I don't know why I did that. So we are back. I scroll back to the end. Slower. So yeah, these are useful sources. And with that, we are at the end of the presentation. And yeah, you can now ask questions or give comments. You can also type in the chat if you want to, if you don't want to speak.
I would like to, well, is more like introducing a situation. I'm thinking about a project. I'm a person with ME/CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis, and I'm on the severe spectrum. So our community has very constricted necessities when it comes to housing and independent living. And so I'm thinking there's, for example, a project in Germany already about a community in a building constructed only for people with myalgic encephalomyelitis. But I'm thinking on starting researching for a project, much broader project for this purpose, specifically for people with severe and very severe ME. And I would like to know if there is something in somebody in your organization that specifically is an expert on this independent living and development of social housing, so I could have an interview with in the future.
Not as such, but we are always open to proposals for project. And I would very much like to hear also about the specific accessibility needs for people with your impairment. So, because we will then, if we want to influence this Construction Services Act, we will have to give specific proposals about how accessible housing is to be designed as specific as possible. And we want to take into the account the needs, of course, of people with all impairments. So yeah, we would be curious, interested to hear more.
Yeah, just let me know who I should talk to if you have an email that you can share, and I will share my details. I'm also an ambassador for ME International, which is the only international organization that helps people with myalgic encephalomyelitis also economically. So I could speak also in the name of my organization.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, we will contact you. Can have a Zoom or something. No.
Maybe I can ask you, Tamara, very quickly, because you mentioned a specific case in Germany for a building for people with your condition only. Is it like a small? So is it kind of like, I don't know, a building that people with your impairment are supposed to stay there and live all together?
Yes, it's a new project done by a social organization in Germany. I don't have much details because I want to have an interview with them to know exactly how they're doing and what they're doing. But it's specifically for people with this condition because we have lots of issues regarding, for example, noise reduction. Like we have to live in environments that unfortunately is not mine, that are absolutely quiet. We also have issues with MCAs, which is a sickness of the mastocytes. So we have a lot of allergic reactions. We also have multiple chemical sensitivities. So we have issues with any smell you can imagine that it doesn't trigger anybody else but us. So I know that they are planning to build that in Germany, and I could find the contact over the organization, and maybe you could talk with them directly.
Thank you for sharing. It's interesting because my initial thought when you said about it was that it is kind of institutional. So, segregating, like people live together. But when you mentioned all these different requirements and discussion, then we enter into a different kind of gray zone. So, I mean, when we need to be kind of more flexible when we discuss, then the questions are whether you can make a regular house like your house or a whatever apartment in the building to be friendly for people with your condition, or this is not possible. So yeah, I mean, I guess it gets a bit complicated, but we are happy to talk in the future. Feel free to reach to any of our emails, and we will connect with each other and try to find a date for discussion.
Okay. Hey, are there more questions or comments? Yeah, please raise your hand if you have some. Okay. There don't seem to be questions or comments. In this case, I propose we close the event 2 minutes early. Yeah, okay. Thank you all for joining. If there are questions, you can also send us an email. Yeah, this is the last policy briefing for this year. Yeah, guess we see you again next year. Have a good afternoon.